Hello. I'm Tianyi. I'm a third-year PhD based at the University of Sydney. I'm supervised by Professor Marcus Carter and Dr. Ben EGLISTON. So today my topic is a little bit stray from the Genshin impact, but it's closely related because I want to walk you through what's happening under the hood. So how mainland Chinese game workers understood and navigated their monetization practices. To start my presentation, in 2025, I read Luan Liu's paper, which was really great because they were trying to understand how Chinese game designers balance monetization and creativity. And their argument was that basically all company scales prioritize short-term revenue over creativity. As much as I think they're telling the truth, my curiosity is that why this is happening. And hopefully through today's presentation, I can show you why in most of the case this is almost like the inevitable outcome we get from the production environment. So when we talk about China, and especially mainland China production, what are we facing? So China has a mobile-first market where the most dominant genre is free-to-play games, freemium games, where players can have free access to the game and using in-app purchase for the later investment. And we have, I think previous presentation also mentioned that we have a few publishers that capture a large user base, like Tencent and NetEase. That's kind of like a few to many model that we have for the production perspective. And why make this, why do we care about China even? I had to do some publicity for Brandon Keel's work. So he argued that video game industry doesn't exist in the sense that we shouldn't view the industry as a monolith. We should view kind of different culture, different production culture especially. And China obviously have a different environment and also different production culture in this sense. And also China has now has the biggest game publisher by revenue, which is Tencent, in 2023. So that makes us, that we should care more about what China is doing. So we also use we borrowed the term Gameworker from Kyo as well. So we want to emphasize that monetization isn't solely a design activity, but it's kind of like a co-negotiation between different roles in the production process, for instance, the publishing process and also the marketing stuff. So our question is, we wonder how was monetization understood and navigated by China's game workers in the contemporary game production environment. So to answer this question, we had to briefly review what has been done within the existing literature. I think, broadly speaking, there are two strands of work when it comes to monetization. The first perspective concentrate on the game production perspective. So they investigate ethics around specific type of monetization design in freemium games, aka loot boxes. And there has been studies that has been conducted in the Norwegian region and argue that freemium devs has no ethical responsibility at all. And there's also another study conducted in the European context, Dino and Petrovskaya's work. They were trying to underline the principles of this type of monetization, and they try to do it on three different levels: interpersonal, organizational, and also external. And the other strand of work look at how monetization was regulated on a global scale. So Leon has published tons of work in that area, and also shout out to Taylor. We did something within the Australian context. But I think what's really important to me is that there seems a gap because my previous study, hopefully is coming out soon because it's under review and several times. So my previous study showed that China has a similar yet different gaming culture around monetization, which cannot be explained with the existing European-centric kind of study. And also, as much as I think the compliance study is doing a great work to hold companies responsible, it doesn't tell us how the actual practices, like how game workers navigate or negotiate with these regulations in their daily lives. So what we ended up doing is that we conducted 24 interviews with active Chinese game workers. Most of the interviews center around designers because monetization is sort of like falling under their responsibility. But also we're trying to give voice to other roles who have been participated in the monetization but haven't received much voice. So we did a constructivist grounded theory, and we try to theorize how do they navigate monetization designs. And we identify three key areas regarding how specific decision was made. So the first level is the business of games. When my interviewees were asked the question, who is responsible to create certain type of monetization design with decisions, they often pointed out to four different roles, and these roles were either having the creative control or have the financial control. So the specific type of decision was often a result of the negotiation between these two groups. And interestingly, they used the term game category instead of game genre to describe or to justify their monetization choices. So for game genre, it's primarily based on gameplay. But for game categories, sort of like a broader idea, it's more of a operational and production logic. So specific type of monetization has a fixed fit with a specific type of category. So that's also kind of related to the second themes, which is the design of games. So our participant told us the core gameplay is very important when it comes to make the decisions because it has a reciprocal relationship with monetization. So you can start from both ends, quoting from my interviewees. Your core gameplay determine what kind of factor or what kind of design could be used for monetization. And in contrast, your monetization strategies determine what kind of factor can be gamified and become the core gameplay. Also, there's a convention of games. An interesting example is the pricing strategy. So for Chinese players, we are pretty much familiar with the 648 price strategy. So that was come from the conversion from Chinese yuan to USD dollars. That's worth 99.9 USD dollars. Because back then, a lot of games had to publish with Apple, and they had to adopt the Apple kind of price tier. So one of my participants told me that it's like selling the movie tickets. It's not really about what's the cost of making the game, but it's more about what's the acceptable price for players. So that's the price is the tickets. And also the data-driven feature. I think we've already know that game companies use data to inform or to optimize their design in a certain way. But I think my participants took this conversation into a darker turn. They were telling me that, okay, we're using data because we want to test what are the acceptable payment limits for players. And I'm not saying this because, I'm not making claims that the industry is evil or like the designers are evil. I think their decisions are because of the third area that we identified, which is the monetization dilemmas. So multiple interviewees, basically all my interviewees told me that they're facing a rising cost of attracting players to their games. So they could spend several times of money in marketing instead of compared to their development costs. At the same time, they had to work with publishers and platforms. And platforms also has their data-driven kind of design. They're trying to minimize the amount of profit game companies can get from them. So the platform is doing that, and so as the publishers. In some extreme settings, the platforms could take 50% of the total revenue from the game company, and the publisher would take the 40% rest. So for the development team, they only have 5 to 10% of the total profit for them. So they choose, or they convince themselves to choose free-to-play or loot boxes type of design because they believe that there's a higher revenue ceiling. And it's helpful for them to survive. And I think the other important factor is the regulatory environment that we're facing, namely the enormous license system. This is a publishing permit system. So basically, if you want to publish your game legally in mainland China, you have to get this permit from China's National Press and Publication Administration. The intention behind this law was to sort of like increase the quality games increase the number of games with high qualities in the game. Because if you're doing piracy or doing copycat games, you're less likely to pass the supervision. But actually, in practices, these type of bill gives big companies uneven competitive advantages over the medium small companies. One of the interesting examples provided by my interviewees is how Tencent managed to navigate this type of licensing system. So back then, when PUBG-like games was a hit, Tencent wanted to have those audiences. So they published a beta version without all the monetization online, and while they were waiting on their license systems. So when they finally received their licenses, they instantly took down the beta version and uploaded the full version with all kinds of monetization strategies. However, when Tencent has done that, there's no compete to Tencent for other companies because they've already got the audiences they want. So small teams or medium-sized companies, they can never do that because running servers and maintaining their services and all that costs money, and small teams can't afford the cash burn. So what are we facing now? We're facing a structure. We're facing a business structure that demands profits from developers or game workers, and also we're facing a type of conventional design that focuses on monetizing or maximize their monetization from players. And we're facing a market with ferocious competitions. And also, we're facing a high compliance cost for the numerous license bill. So these lead to our argument. We feel like, game workers don't really have a say in this process. They were dragged into what we call a commercialized production ethos. So they sort of embraced a set of internalized value and practical orientations to compel to game workers and to adopt a monetization first design in order to respond the systematic and the institutional difficulties they're facing. And I think it's not uncommon to see criticisms of Chinese games being inferior and being cat grabbing. But I think the deeper we offer a kind of a ground to explain why this is happening, because it's a systematic problem. And however, we want to note that there is a risk of fully embracing this type of ethos. Namely, we noticed that what we call predatory monetization, like loot boxes and other dark patterns, has been highly normalized by our participants, and they were kind of reframing this type of design as the necessary tool for them to survive. And this would exacerbate the already poor compliance monetization regulations in China, because it's hard to tell someone to not doing something they don't feel wrong. So I guess to end my presentation for some future works, we don't intend, in the beginning of our work, we don't want to only focus on freemium companies, but we ended up having 21 out of 24 people who have worked or are working with freemium games. So we think it's worth to kind of explore different kind of productions, like premium games is rising in China, indie games is rising, so it might be worthy to look how they think about it, and also ended up with a big question: what can we do to provide a better production environment for Chinese game workers? I guess that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're open to questions. Yes, I see.
Thank you so much. Hey, I'm asking this question because I'm sure you've been thinking about it. How sustainable do you think that this monetization first design of the free-to-play model in China is? Any thoughts? I'm just asking for more talk from you.
I think the problem is that this type of design creates a gambling mentality, not only among players, but also among game companies. One thing that I noticed is that, quoting from my interviewees, she's very interesting because she said, you should understand what kind of games you're doing. You should position yourself, not, for instance, if you're investing a lot in the games, you can go with free-to-play kind of model because you can get potentially you can get more revenue. But if you're not doing something that's specific or that's suitable for freemium games, you just don't do freemium model. But I guess the problem is that people want to do freemium games because they think that's kind of guarantee a higher financial return for them. I don't think it's in terms of sustainability, I don't think that's sustainable. And that's really bad for a lot of game companies. What we see today, it's a booming industry for sure, but it's more of the survivor kind of bias because they survived through this process. And there are a lot of companies literally died. A lot of most of my interviewees have been laid off by their companies, and they have to find another project or to just go to the big companies. So I think, it's not really sustainable, but we can't really stop people to dive into that path, which is tragic, I think.
Thank you, Tianyi. You're fantastic. I'm curious to learn more about how Gameworker has reframed predatory monetization as necessary. Yep. I'm sure we spoke about this, but in my work with Australian game developers, they would say things like, it's really unethical to do X, Y, Z, but I have to because rent or, while I'm making the games that I want to make on the side, whatever. So I'm curious about if these kinds of tensions came up in your interviews, if developers were speaking about this as necessary,
That's a great question. I think you would love to see the topic. You would love to see the title of the manuscript. So basically, one of my interviewees said to me, he is really excited when people start to spending in their games because he will get the year-end bonus if his game reached the top chart of the top selling list. I think not all developers aren't conscious about ethical issues. Most of them for people who only work for freemium industry, they might have a different opinions. But I also have data from people who used to do indie stuff, and then they had to shift into freemium play, and they express that kind of the similar concern that I had to do it even though I don't want to. So I guess I don't really have a good way to address this tension. I guess it's just unfortunate that we're in this kind of environment today.
So one last question back then.
Hi.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I guess my question has to do with sort of the uniqueness of China in terms of these commercialized production ethos which you're proposing that these workers have. Do you think these are demonstrably different from commercialized production ethos that might be active in other countries? I mean, some of the issues that you're talking about in terms of short-term profits, in terms of being forced into these potentially predatory monetization models. I mean, it seems like this is maybe not unique to China, but
I think I get the point because I also see because laying off and the job precarity is a global thing, and also like the crunch culture. It's very much like the rest of the world, basically. What makes China different is the regulatory space. So we have to kind of we have to endure with the higher compliance rate. Not only I think numerous license is one of the best examples to show like how hard to navigate this type of stuff, but also so for game companies, firstly, they had to wait for the license because the license require the game companies to submit a full game. So if you only have the idea of your game, you can't get the license. So the difficulty for them is that they have to finish their game and they have to face an uncertain result because it's very likely that you're not going to have the license. So you have the investment now, you're waiting for the license, you're burning cash to maintain your service as well, to maintain your games, and you ended up getting no permission. You ended up don't get the permission, and then the whole project just collapses, and your career is gone. So I think that's the kind of uniqueness. If China is unique, that's kind of the uniqueness within the Chinese production environment.
Okay, thank you all.
Yeah.
That's